So in the last video, we set up some bouncing blades here so that when we start our game, we have the ability to, well, have these blades that bounce up and down. Now I had a challenge where I wanted you to go ahead and use the tweens to go left and right as well. Anyone do it? Anyway, I want to make a new one today, and I want something that goes along a platform. And when it gets to a certain point, it'll turn around and go the other way. There's a few ways we can do this. One is we can just set it up and then expose a variable for distance. So when it's traveled that much distance, it'll turn around and travel that much distance to go back. I don't like to do all that math. So what I like to do is just set up some sort of invisible wall that only the enemies can interact with. And when they hit that wall, they turn around and go the other way. We could also do it with, I think it's called the marker 2D. I think that's what it's called. Yeah, marker 2D. But I'm going to do it the old-fashioned way and use my invisible walls. So to start off with, let's make that new enemy. So again, I like to start off with an area 2D for most of my stuff. And then from under here, we're going to add an animated sprite, 2D. Make sure we select the parent again. Now we'll add our collision shape 2D. There are three things that I almost always add. So I'm going to come in, rename this. What should we call it? Let's call it floor. Actually, let's find out what kind of mob we're going to get. I believe we had a blade on the ground. Yeah, saw. So we have a saw half. If I double click. Really not going to load it up over here. Oh, let's go to the inspector. So the dead just has the eyes. Half, take note of where the blades are. Half move, they kind of rotate a bit. So I'm going to make an animated sprite with half and half move. So I'll start off with that. I'll come in, open up animation, open up sprite frames, new sprite frame. And if I open that up, it opens this part up. Now I'm only going to have one animation here. So it really doesn't matter what I call it. I do want it to play by default. Now I'm going to come up, take a look at it. Just so we can see it playing inside of the view port up here. If I start it, I can change how fast it plays by adjusting the number here. The smaller the number, the slower it goes. The faster or the larger the number, the faster it goes. So find the one that works for you, maybe 4. I think it started at 5. Let's try 6. So usually I like an even number. Sure, I'm just going to go with that. If I want to change it later, that's fine, I can. But now that I have an item here, I'm going to call it floor blade. And I do need my collision shape. I'm going to make it a circle, but before I do that, I want to move my animated sprite up. And I'm going to stop it. We'll shrink this down. Take it. I want it to be right around with this level, where this line is, the red line. Because now I can just come into my collision shapes. I'm going to make a circle. And I'll just scale uniformly. I guess technically I could shrink it up on the Y because I don't need all this down here. But that's fine. Now I'll save it. And again, I'll save it into my scenes. It's called floor blade. Save. And I know I will need a script. So while I'm here, I'll add that as well. And again, I'll call it floor blade, but I don't want it in scenes. So we'll click that, go into scripts, and I'll save it here. I'm going to leave the default that we have here. I'll save it. I'm going to come back into my main scene. Let's look at the 2D. Now, if I come in and add the new floor blade, so instance floor blade, he's up here. The way I want it to work is he's just going to patrol this platform right here. And I want him to be actually on the train. As I start adding more and more enemies, it's really going to get cluttered over here. And as I start adding more and more invisible walls for the enemies to work with, that's going to even add more to the clutter. So I'm going to proactively go ahead and start making some folders over here. The way I do that is I select main, right click, add a child node, and I'm actually looking for the default node. So it's just a simple node. Take note, when we have nodes selected here, we can't move it. We can't do anything. So I don't have to worry about accidentally clicking it and dragging it and everything that I have in it moving with it. I really like nodes just for, well, the whole folder aspect. So with it selected, I'm going to rename it to enemies. Then I'm going to go and select all my enemies, drag and drop, put them in. Now I'm going to do another one, and this is for my level geometry. So I'm just going to call it geometry. I'll do the same thing. I'm going to take my tile map. I'm going to put that under it because this is also where I'm going to put my invisible walls. But first, let's get this guy moving. So I'm going to come into the script. I'm going to create some variables up here. So I do want all my floor blades to be able to move at different speeds. So we'll export this variable. I'm just going to call it speed. Since we're moving in pixels, we'll do an int. I'm going to start it off. I don't know what's a good speed to start off with, so I'll just do 100. I'll save that. I'm going to come down here. And the way we have it move is if we say position dot x. So we're going to take our position, our being the floor blade, and we're going to move on our x. And remember, the positive goes to the right. So I'll say plus equals. And then whatever we have for that speed up there, I'm going to be doing this multiply by delta. Now this delta, I'm getting from right here. It's a parameter that's passed in. And what delta is, it's the time from the last frame to the current frame. So regardless of what speed, like frame rate your computer's running at, it'll always move the same speed. So if it's running at a really fast frame rate, this will be a smaller number. So it moves less pixels every frame, where if it's running at a lower frame rate, delta will be a bigger number. So that means that we'll move more pixels per frame. If we ever get into multiplayer, this will really come in handy to make sure that everything's moving at the same speed on everyone's computer, regardless of their specs. So I'm going to save this. Let's just go run it. We should see it start running off to the right. And we do. And I guess we could move these blades. We'll leave them there for now. Great. We got it moving to the right. I want to be able to move to the left as well. So I'm going to export this because sometimes you're going to want your blade to start off moving to the left or moving to the right. I want to be able to have that option. So I'm going to say, yeah, we'll do face left. I'm going to start this off as equaling false. And then down here, I can take a look at that. I can say if face left, meaning does face left equal true? If it does, we'll do some sort of movement. But there's a fast way to write this, and we can just check to see if face left. And then I'm going to copy this line because I can paste this in. And keep in mind, if we're moving to the left, it has to be a negative because we want to subtract from our x position. And then this other one, if we're not facing left, well, the only other direction we can face is right. So we'll add to it. That's one too many tabs. So let's test this out. I'm going to come back into my scene. Let's go to the 2D view. We'll open this up. I want to make sure I can select my floor guy. We have two parameters exposed here. I'm going to turn on face left. So he should start off moving this way. We'll start him up. And sure enough, he's running straight at me. But he doesn't kill me yet. And just to show that if we turn it off and we run it, he should move to the right. And he does. Great. So the next thing I want to do is put up these invisible walls for him to bounce off of. And I just realized I used the wrong tile here. I'll fix that off screen later. That's okay. So invisible walls. Let's make a new scene. For these, again, I'll just do an area 2D. And then I'm not going to add a sprite to them because I want them to be invisible. But we still need a collision shape 2D. I'm going to zoom in on it. I'm going to rename this. It's a wall that only the enemy can hit. I'm going to call it enemy wall. I'll save this off. I'm going to throw it into the scene right away. And for my collision, I'm going to come in, make it a rectangle, and then zoom in a bit and scale it. I do want it to go a little bit below the ground and above the ground. So I'm going to save this off, but I've got to go ahead and put it on a layer that our enemy can interact with. So to do that, I'll come into the collision. Again, make sure you have the area 2D selected. And right now my enemies are on layer 3. I almost always pick the one right underneath it for it. So I'm going to put this on 7, and it will only work with 3. If we leave 1 on, that means our player's going to be detected when it goes through it as well. Since we're not actually going to add any scripts or anything to it, it really doesn't matter. Our player will just run right through it. But I still like to set it up to it can only interact with our enemies. Now you can have multiple different types of enemies as well. So maybe you have some enemies that you want to ignore this layer. That's fine as well. But again, let's rename this just so it doesn't say layer 7. We know what layer 7 is supposed to be. So we'll come in, open it up, layer 7. I'm going to call it, let's just call it enemy wall. Then we'll go ahead and enter close. I'll save this off, come back into our 2D view on the main, and let's add it. So I'm going to select the geometry. I'm going to hit the little chain. We'll add the enemy wall. Here it is up here. I'm going to drag it down to about here. I'm going to duplicate it. So on Windows, that's Command D. Sorry, Control D. On a Mac, it's Command D. There we go. I'll set those up. Now I have to come into my floor blade. And since he's going to interact with these, I have to open up his collision. And we have to think about it. I want to make sure he is on layer 3 because he's an enemy. I want to make sure I'm interacting with layer 1 because that's the player. And I eventually want to kill the player if I hit him. But I still need to interact with 7 as well because that's the one that makes us bounce. So let's save it. And let's set up the killing of the player first, because that one's really easy. We've already written all the code for that. So I'll come in, and if we remember, the player is a body, not an area. So if we say body entered, and we actually have to be in the main scene for this. Select the floor blade, and if the body enters, I'm going to go to the player, and this should work now. Yep, there we go. We're going to call that game over. I'm just going to connect it. I'll save it. It's going down here. And let's just test this. It should kill us, and the level should restart. Let's get it going towards us instead. And I didn't mean to restart it. Let's come in, grab that floor blade, come over here. Let's make it face left. Start it back up. Come on. There we go. Oh, killed me. We'll do it one more time just to make sure. Yep, got me. And we notice when the level restarts, he restarts back over here too. So great. Let's have it not face left. I'm going to have it face the other way. And I want him to bounce off of those walls. So I'm going to come back into the floor blade script. Right here. And we'll shrink this down just so we can see a bit better. And all I have to do is detect when I hit that area. So if we look at the collision layers up here again, the only thing I can interact with is anything that's on the player layer. And right now that's just going to be the player. And anything that's on layer 7, which is the areas that we set up to be those invisible walls. So what I'll do is I'll come into the node. I'm going to look for the area entered. And I'll just leave it here. So I'll do connect. And just to show that this is the enemy walls that we're colliding with, I'm going to print. And then we're going to say whatever we collided with, which is passed in through the variable area. And I just want to get its name. I'm going to save this off. We'll run it. And since he's going right, he should hit that wall. And we get the enemy wall too, which is, well, it's the right wall, right? So when we hit a wall, instead of just printing out its name, what I want to do is take that face left and make it equal to whatever it was before, but the reverse. So if it was originally facing left, so true, then we're going to flip it to a false and save it back in. So this is a toggle. It should make it bounce back and forth. And just to make things a little easier for me, I'm going to come in, look at the 2D view. I'm going to grab all these bouncing enemies here, the blades. I'm just going to move them out of the way so I have room to maneuver. And let's try it out. So he hits it. He bounces back. He should hit this one, bounce again. And I probably want him to go a little faster. We could probably even affect the rotation speed of the blades as well. And then again, when it kills us, boom, restarts. All right. So actually, that's it. That's all I really wanted to get for this one. Let me know down below what you want to see. Maybe not in the next video, but in the coming up videos. So we could go through, set up the animations for the stuff that we haven't done yet. But since I've shown you how to do this one, you could probably get these ones working on your own. Player animations, I want to save that till we completely rewrite our own custom player controller, because anything we do with it now, we're just gonna have to redo. But as far as what I have planned next is I want to make some items that we can pick up and then work on our GUI so that when we pick items up, maybe we have a score that shows up. And we should set up some lives as well. Maybe start off with 3 lives. Every time you die, you lose a life. Lose all 3 lives, game over. If there's any basic mechanics that you want to see inside of a 2D platformer, go ahead and let me know down below. We can add it to the list. Anyway, as always, I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.